Us. You are on mute.
Can you hear me?
Oh
Yes,
my,
Yeah.
hallelujah.
Bravo. Good.
So we have discovered the problem. There is a problem with my computer. So
Oh,
that is
okay.
why I am Nabil. So I will
Oh,
just
okay. Yes.
change that.
How's my buddy Nabil doing?
He's doing well. Thank you so
Good.
much.
Good.
My apologies.
That's okay. So I have the honor of introducing you. So I think we'll get right into it.
Absolutely.
Yes, well, while you were trying to get on, jokes were going back and forth and they were getting dirtier as we went along. So really had to stop. So I'm glad that you're here. Um,
Oh,
So I hope I've introduced you before, so I'm going to do my best with your last name, and if I mess it up, please forgive me. Gail O'Day, okay,
you've got it.
is a coach and trainer for the Center for Conflict Resolution International, where she utilizes her expertise in interpersonal dynamics. Team development, that doesn't stop there. Team development, leadership, leadership development, and organizational systems in addressing conflict issues in the workplace. As a professional certified coach, Gail is frequently involved in coaching individuals and teams as they deal with conflict, change, and goal setting. Additionally, and I love this part, Gail is largely a self-taught artist, utilizing her time in her studio as an opportunity for continued personal growth as it constantly stretches her to experiment and rely on her intuition. Recently, she has begun teaching acrylic paint pouring. That sounds so cool. Paint pouring workshops to share her love of the creative process. As a Rotarian, Gail is a past president of the Rotary Club of Orleans or Orleans
Orleans. Orleans.
or Orleans. Okay. There was a
We say
little,
it in English.
okay. Here I was doing my best there. As well as past president in 2024-25. At the district level, she has served as district trainer, program chair for several district conferences, and conference chair in 2021. She has served as a zone trainer for the district governor-elect partners and as an international training leader at the Rotary International Assembly. She served for 3 years on the Canadian Polio Advocacy Task Force. Gail is a Paul Harris Fellow, a major donor, and a member of the Rotary Foundation's Bequest Society. Thank you for being here, Dale, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I got to shorten that bio a little bit.
It's a good one, though.
That's too long. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I'm sorry we ran into issues. I'm glad, however, that you were part of that conflict resolution process of what is wrong with why I can't log on to some of these meetings. And it seems to be it's a problem with my computer. So not we were thinking it was Wi-Fi here, all kinds of stuff. No, it's just my computer. So that being said, um, let's get into to the content here, and let's talk about conflict resolution in clubs. Now, because I've switched over to Nabil's computer, I don't have my slides. Does someone else have access to those, and can they share them? Beautiful. I
Just for
can
you, Gail.
I can count on you, Bob. I appreciate that so much.
There you go. Do you want me to advance
Excellent.
them as we go?
Yeah, I'll let you
You
know, and then if you
okay?
don't mind doing that, that would be great.
Okay.
So I love calling this presentation When Good People Disagree, because we often think of conflict in such a negative way. And what I think makes conflict in Rotary a little bit unique is that we're all good people trying to do good things that we sort of think off the top of our heads, well, there shouldn't be any conflict, right? If we're all good people with good intentions, why should there be problems? And yet that still happens. So, Bob, if you can just advance that to the next slide, I just want to ask folks, and I'm going to ask you as I talk, as I present, jump in if you've got questions, put them in the chat, let me know, and we can do that as we go. But what I want to talk about today, particularly, is some insights into how and why conflict happens. And again, particularly in our clubs. But the reason this is so important is that if we understand how and why it happens, then that also gives us clues as to how to address it. Because a lot of times, conflict, uh, I would say 90% of us, maybe 100% of us, are not particularly adept or wanting to deal with conflict. And so when we have to, if we don't deal with it correctly, we in fact make the situation worse. So it becomes really important to understand how and why it happens. And we'll talk about a little bit then, like I said, where that leads to tips for intervening, how to address the conflict. And I know we've started late today, so if we get time, we'll also spend some time talking about in some particular case studies and look at those and kind of put the learnings into those case studies. So if you could move it on to one more, Bob, please. Um, so here's the question. I open this up to the chat, and if you want to just jump in verbally, that's okay too. But from your experience, maybe not your experience, but what you know about other people's clubs, what causes conflict in clubs? What have you seen? What do you know about? And just there's no wrong answer here. So what causes conflict in clubs?
Different
Jump
things.
in, put
Sorry,
I-
it's Mark Morissette from Oshawa. Just kind of prepping for what's next for me. It seemed even with the little things going on now, it's a clash of, and as you say, everybody's good people, but it's a clash of agendas. And I know agenda doesn't sound like it's a great word, but everybody does have an agenda.
yeah.
I guess the big piece is making sure that they align with the goals of the club, but that's what I would see. It seems to be a clash of
Absolutely.
agendas.
Yep, absolutely. And in the chat, people hooked on what they've always done. Absolutely. So that not wanting to make changes, lack of communication, different beliefs, perspectives, different personalities. Absolutely. Overlapping responsibilities. Absolutely. Clash of generations. People have been around for a while. Yep. Again, back to some of that change. Former board members not wanting to relinquish perceived control. Absolutely. I know a lot of clubs that have board members that have been on there forever and ever. Any others? Anybody want to jump in with some others? There are more. We've covered a few, but there are more.
One of the big discussions at our club is where we meet
Ah,
because
hmm
we've had to move recently and there's a lot of discussion about what's appropriate and what people are willing to where they're willing to go and there's very different ideas.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Membership dues.
Uh-huh. Yep. Money issues. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Too few people expected to do all the work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So again, we could probably leave this line of question open for another 5 minutes and you'd come up with more. Yeah, some more in the chat, being open to change, new ideas, lack of time management and succession issues. Absolutely. So there's so many different things that can cause conflict. And so an example um, somebody said overlapping responsibilities. Well, In terms,
Uh-oh.
one person says, well, I'm in charge of this, so I should do all of these things. And in fact, it's, somebody else says, no, no, that's my job. Dealing with that and how to deal with that, as opposed to dealing with a situation where people are not communicating well. Or you've got somebody who's a big personality in your club and kind of dominates conversation, let's say. How you deal with those different types of conflicts completely differently. And if we tried to deal with them exactly the same, we'd run into trouble because there's such different conflicts. So, Bob, if you could advance the slide once again, I want to talk about different types of conflict. And we visualize it in this sort of lotus flower visual because there are I always think of them as sort of petals of one thing, in that they aren't always exactly only one type of conflict. But if you start getting at where does this conflict dominate in terms of the zone of conflict, it gives you hints as to how to deal with it. So let me explain. So a perceptual conflict, starting on the left side there, is the kind of conflict that, at its simplest terms, is called a misunderstanding. So if I say or do something and you perceive it differently than what I intended, there's a conflict. So, I'm club president and I say, you know what, we need to spend more time working on youth issues in our community. And then the next thing I do is something totally unrelated to youth. And you're going, well, wait a minute. You just said we need to spend all our time dealing with youth issues, but that's not what you're doing. What's going on here? And you perceive me as not following through, being hypocritical, not being committed, however you perceive me. But it wasn't my intention. I maybe was intending to just put it out there as a point of conversation. And so, what I intended with my communication, what you perceived, two different things. So, that's perceptual conflict. Now, if what you're dealing with is miscommunication, a misunderstanding, the way to resolve that is clarification. And I oversimplify. It's not always easy to clarify, but it takes, in the example I just gave, it takes you coming back to me and going, hey, wait a minute, Gail, didn't you just say we're supposed to focus on youth projects and now you're doing something else? And I can then clarify and say, yeah, you're right. I did say that. I was hoping I would generate some conversation about what we should do. I wasn't intending to say, we're doing this, full stop. But it takes that back and forth in terms of allowing for clarification. And sometimes clarification is tough, but that is the tip or the way to resolve perceptual conflict. The next one, positional, is a little bit different. And it means that I have a certain position or oftentimes a way of doing things. And you might say, well, no, I don't agree. I think that we need to do this or that. Even linking it to what I just said. Let's say I say, you know what, my focus is really community service projects. And you go, well, I really, really prefer international service projects. Well, we could say, oh, I guess we can't be in the same club. Can't do that. Well, with positional conflicts, we have a couple of options. So in that example, it can be as simple as, okay, then you be on the International Service Committee and I'll be on the Community Service Committee and we'll do our own thing. It's all good. Don't have to do the same thing. We don't have to agree on everything. Or maybe we go, okay, we've got limited resources in our club. It's really small. How about this year we'll work on some significant community service project, and next year or down the road, a couple of years, we'll work on international, or vice versa. So we sort of take turns and give each other the options. Or we go, okay, so maybe we can't do as big a community service project or as big an international service project. We're going to have to do smaller ones on both sides. So it's sort of a win-win. We get a bit of what we both want. So that's positional. We can often agree to disagree with positional conflicts. We don't have to, like in that example, I could tell you forever what I mean by community service projects. You know what I mean. It's not a misunderstanding. It's not a perceptual issue. It's that we just don't agree on that. So positionals, we've got a couple of options there. Relational is sitting there in the big one because it probably is what is the cause of conflict the majority of the time, and that is that we're just different people and we operate differently. Somebody was mentioning the conflict about where you meet. And you change places, not everybody's happy with it. Is this the right place to meet, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that can be a couple of different kinds of conflicts depending on the reasons behind what people are feeling or thinking. But I find a lot of times those kind of conflicts are relational in that you've got some Rotarians going, well, this place is not becoming of Rotarians. We used to meet at this fancy hotel with, a three-course lunch. And, now that we're having sandwiches in this other place, it's just, it's not a real Rotary meeting. And it's how it makes them feel, the importance of being a Rotarian and what that means. It's not about the actual location. It's about what that all signifies for them. And so we're all different that way. Not all of us feel the same way about what it means to be a Rotarian or how I feel as a Rotarian. Does that make a difference where I meet or how it appears? Some of us find that important, others don't find that important. And we're just different people. In my club, we have issues we're a morning club. And so we meet in the mornings, but we've now divided our time between morning and evening meetings because we have a whole bunch of people who are going, you know what? I can't keep showing up every week at 7 o'clock in the morning. Just can't do it. I'm just not a morning person. So we're trying going back and forth, morning, evening, morning, evening. It's confusing. We still have people who keep coming at the wrong time, but it was a relational issue. We were finding people that were saying, look, I just can't get myself there. I just can't be organized enough to feel like I can make a contribution if it's always a morning meeting, because they weren't morning people. So that was a relational issue. We're just different kind of people. How we operate is different. Now, relational issues require communication. You have to talk about it. So, for example, my club is relatively small, and we were having these morning meetings, and we had people join us and come for like a month, 2 months maybe, and then stop coming. And we're going, what's happening here? What's going on? But we could have made perceived that, oh, I guess they don't like it anymore. They don't want to come anymore. we had to ask, so what's going on? And they go, well, and then they told us, about the whole mornings, it's not my thing. So then we started asking the club, okay, how are people feeling about this? And it became a discussion in the club, what should we do? And we agreed to try this new way of this new structure. So it takes communication back and forth, talking about it, being open with each other about how we're feeling about things, et cetera, et cetera. Some things are more structural. So I was mentioning before, overlapping responsibilities, somebody put on in there. That is a structural issue. It can devolve into relational and perceptual issues because it can get to the point where somebody perceives that, oh, they're jumping in where they don't belong, they're taking stuff that belongs to me, et cetera, et cetera. It can lead to that. But at its core, it's structural. Because if there are overlapping responsibilities or a lack of clarity in who's supposed to be doing what, that's a structural thing. That's either the job descriptions are not clear enough. People have not paid attention and read the job descriptions and adopted job descriptions. The structure of the club may be such that it just kind of naturally means that things overlap, et cetera, et cetera. But those are structural issues. And so when we have structural issues, again, the key to resolving a structural issue is fix the structure. So if there's lack of clarity, either that means better job descriptions, better delineation of who does what, or it means if there are good job descriptions, we actually need to go over them so that everybody knows them and understands them and adopts them. So that's that. Then there are systemic issues. And those are those things that are bigger than our Rotary clubs, but impact our Rotary clubs. So, for example, things that are beyond our control can impact Rotary. I'm not going to get into politics here, but the fact of American politics right now, and the reality of what's happening in the States is making an impact. We have a lot of districts. The district I'm in is a Canada-US district. We have some American clubs. We're finding it more difficult to go back and forth across the border. People don't want to go. Canadians don't want to go to the States. So more meetings are held in Canada, but the Americans don't necessarily, all of them want to keep coming up to Canada as well. That has not been an issue previously, but in the new political climate has become more significant. Well, the political climate is not something we can change, right? What we have to do is figure out where those conflicts arise. We have to figure out, okay, so how do we do the best we can in the current circumstances? So systemic conflicts are those things that are much bigger, much broader, and we probably can't fix ourselves. So we just need to figure out, okay, so how do we deal with it to the best of our ability? So in our district, it means a few more online things, less travel around, and recognizing and giving grace to people who don't feel comfortable or are unable. In fact, some cases they're unable to travel back and forth because of the new circumstances. So we have to recognize those are just realities that we're going to have to deal with right now. And Rotary International, for example, is dealing with that at the level of polio and polio vaccination, right? And what's happening right now in the world scene in terms of who's supporting that and who's not, and how do we work around that. So as soon as you understand that when you're looking at a situation in your club, and not every conflict situation is created equal, and you start realizing, okay, this is more relational, this is more perceptual, or this is more structural, then that starts giving you options as to how you address that. So, Bob, if you can move on to the next one, I want to keep us moving here. I could talk about this forever, so I got to start watching my time here. The other piece that's important to recognize is how conflict escalates. So, at its earliest form, a conflict is simply a difference. It's a difference in terms of maybe wants, needs, expectations, but it's just a difference. And so long as we're focused on that problem, that difference, and how do we address it, whether it's structural, whether it's systemic, whether it's perceptual, whatever, but so long as we're focusing in on that, discussion, communication will allow us to resolve it. Unfortunately, so often we don't communicate at that point. And it doesn't take a lot. But if we don't address it at that productive level, if we are not immediately recognizing and talking about it, it doesn't take long before it moves up. And Bob, you're first on my screen here, so I'll pick on you. If Bob and I are having a conflict and we don't immediately discuss it and deal with it at that productive level, it very quickly, I start going, boy, Bob's stubborn, right? And as soon as I get to the point of saying Bob is stubborn, I've moved that conflict. It has escalated up a notch to personalized. Because now, if you ask me, what's the problem over there, Gail? I'm going, you know what's the problem? Bob's the problem. He's the problem. He's not listening. He's being stubborn. He's whatever, right? But I've now, instead of focusing in on the problem, I'm focusing on Bob. And as soon as I'm doing that, very quickly, it happens in return. And Bob is likely saying the exact same thing about me. Yeah, she just spouts out of her mouth and she doesn't listen to anything. And then we're focused on each other instead of focused on the problem. What happens also at that stage of personalization is that then to bolster my position that Bob is the problem, I'm going to start coming up with other reasons why he's the problem. We call it issue proliferation. And so, although we had that original disagreement about whatever it was, now I'm going to tell you, yeah, I first met Bob. Now, I don't know how many years ago now it is, Bob, that we met, but I first met him so and so many years ago. I knew he was going to be a problem then because that first time we had a conversation, he said such and so, and I just knew he was that kind of guy who's, gonna cause problems. And then I remember like a year later at a meeting, and he did this and that was a problem. And you know what? Next year, if he gets to be in charge of that committee, he's going to run it to the ground because that's the kind of guy Bob is, because it's his way or the highway, right? And so I'm not even just now telling you why Bob's the problem in this particular issue. I'm telling you that I had this other problem with him, and there's this other thing about Bob, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. And again, likely coming back the same way. And now we've got my visual here is one nice neat spiral. In fact, there's a whole bunch of spirals going out in different directions at that point in time. And I can't talk just in thin air, right? I need to tell somebody all these things I know about Bob and why he's the problem. So then I move on to somebody, and I'm going to pick on you, Elizabeth, because you're next to my screen. I'm going to go to Elizabeth and I go, Bob is this, and he did this, and he's a problem. Don't you agree? And now you have your choice. You can say, yeah, I agree. I go, great, you're on my side. You can say, no, I disagree. Oh, you're on Bob's side. Or you can say, I'm Switzerland here. I don't want to get involved. And then I'll just assign you a spot So you don't get out that way and then go, oh yeah, she doesn't want to say, but she really agrees with me. Or, yeah, she doesn't want to say, I know she's on Bob's side. You'll get assigned to a spot regardless, a side regardless. But as soon as I'm doing that and I'm talking to other people and I'm assigning them sides, I'm moving it up another notch to hostile because I'm involving other people. And again, Bob likely on the same side. In fact, Bob might go to Elizabeth and do the same thing. He might go to the exact same person and say, yeah, Gail's really, like, she's really gone overboard here. Like, she's really annoying, isn't she? And Elizabeth goes, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And, okay, Bob says, yep, she's on my side. Or she might say, you know what, staying out of this. And Bob says, no, I know she wants to stay out of it, but she agrees with me. Right? So, and in fact, we may have both talked to Elizabeth and we may assign her to different sides. And I've seen this happen where I've gone into organizations and they've told me everybody's picked sides. And I go, okay, so who's on whose side? And each person gives me a different list because they've just assigned them, even when they haven't said they're on certain sides. And so I talk to Elizabeth, I say, oh, yeah, she's really on my side. Bob talks to Elizabeth, and he says, oh, yeah, she's really on his side. And then I see Elizabeth talking to Rhonda, you're next on my list on my screen, so I'll give you your next. So I see Elizabeth talking to Rhonda, and I go, okay, yeah, yeah, that's because she's on my side, and she and Rhonda get along. So then I'll assume Rhonda's on my side too. And so and it's made up. Like sometimes it's real. Rhonda may actually come to me and go, yeah, see, you've been having a problem with Bob. I've had a problem with him too. That also does happen for sure. And but sometimes they get assigned sides without even realizing. As soon as you've got those sides, you've got hostile, right? And for those people who know what side they've been assigned to, or they want to be on somebody's side. So maybe I've got my people and they're supporting me, and Bob's got his people and they're supporting him. Well, guess what? Then the conflict isn't anymore just between Bob and I, it's between all those other people as well. And depending on where that goes, okay, and many conflicts sit there for a while where you just have camps. You have that camp and you have that camp. Um, but that can also get more hostile and accusatory. And now I've never seen it in Rotary, but it's at this point, if violence is going to become a part of the conflict, that's where it happens because people literally will sometimes take shots at each other at that point. Like I said, I've never seen that in Rotary. I've never seen a conflict get down to a fist fight in a Rotary club, but I have seen it elsewhere. I have seen it in the workplace, and I've seen people get out in the parking lot and start duking it out. So that's where that happens. And eventually that becomes totally polarized because you have two groups of people that don't want to talk to each other or interact with each other or deal with each other. And this is where people leave clubs. People stop going to meetings because so and so is going to be there, et cetera, et cetera. And it becomes completely polarized. Now, this escalation process can be slow and steady, and you can kind of plateau at a certain level for a while, or it can be fast and furious. You can go from a productive conflict to somebody saying, I'm leaving, never coming back in the matter of an hour meeting, right? So it can be slow and sure, it can be very fast. But how you deal with it at those different levels is different. Like I said, productive, Bob and I talk it out, we work it out, it's all good. Even at the personalized stage, if we're keen and, we sit down and we go, Bob, I've really found you stubborn about this. And he's going, hey, wait a minute. Stubborn about what? Let's work this out. And we decide to sit down and get some new perspective and some new understanding, work it out. We can. So even at the personalized stage, we can. But as soon as we start pulling in other people, it becomes more and more difficult. In fact, I have seen situations where, say Bob and I resolve our differences, but we've already involved other people. They're still fighting and arguing with each other, even once we've resolved our differences, because we started other conflicts happening. So it's important to recognize who's all involved in the conflict and how far is it escalated. Because if it's escalated into the hostile, into the polarized territory, you're going to need assistance. You probably can't just resolve it, the people that are involved themselves. And so again, there's no shame in asking for help when you need help. You may need somebody who's unbiased. Depends on where you, as a club president, are. Are you part of the problem? Are you part of the conflict? Or are you absolutely outside of it and neutral? If you're not, if you've been subsumed into those groups in any way, shape, or form, you're going to probably need somebody else to come in and help with that. Okay, I want to move on, trying to be aware of time here. Can we go to the next slide, Bob? Yeah. So here's where we have a little bit of fun. All of us, when it comes to conflict, have our style or our approach. And we don't all deal with conflict the same way. We've usually learned the style of dealing with conflict, probably from either the way we've been brought up. This is what my parents taught me, or this is how it was done at home. Some of us have learned it in the workplace and what's required of us at work, et cetera, et cetera. But we have learned these, and we do them often without even realizing. And so let me look at these five. We use birds to explain it. I think it again brings out the mystery and makes it not so not so intimidating, I guess is the word I'd want to use. But you'll see they're on a grid. So on the left, up, down, you see focus on self, and across you see focus on other. And everybody sits somewhere in that grid when they deal with conflict. So for example, on the top left, you see the woodpecker. Some of us tend to be woodpeckers when it comes to conflict. And woodpeckers are those birds, they found that spot in the tree where there's either some sap or an insect that they want, and they're just going to hammer away at it until they get what they want. And some of us are like that in conflict. I'm going to wear you down. I'm going to say, no, got to do it like this. He said, what about, no, got to do it like this. Well, what about, no, we got to do it like this. And I am going to hammer away at that until you acquiesce and you say, okay, it's just easier. Gail's not going to give this up. Fine, let's do it that way, right? The woodpecker is very focused on, I know how to do this. I know the right way. I'm talking about conflict here. So I know the solution to this problem. This is the way we need to go. And I am determined that that is the way we need to go. The focus and the reason to focus on self is it's sort of my way or the highway. I know what the right answer is. Woodpeckers are not terribly worried about the other or any relationship that goes with it. So from a woodpecker, you're going to hear things like, it's not a popularity contest. I don't care if they like me or not. Going to hear that kind of thing. Or the other thing you're going to hear from woodpeckers is things like, well, it's the principle. And again, there's a time and a place for being a woodpecker. And sometimes it is the principle, right? I often tell people Mother Teresa was a woodpecker when it came to poverty, right? She's not saying, okay, well, yeah, we could make this a little bit better, or sometimes we can work on poverty. No, she's going, this is what we need to deal with. This is a major issue. We need to, everybody needs to be concerned about this. We need to keep working on this. I don't think she ever had a conversation with anybody where poverty didn't become part of that conversation, and what should we do about it, and what, who should take, what kind of responsibility that person should take for the situation. she was very clear. This is how it needs to be done, and this is what needs to be done, and this is where we need to focus our attention. And because of that, she made a huge impact. If she had said, yeah, you feel like it, maybe sometimes, and wasn't so woodpeckery about it, she wouldn't have had nearly the impact. So it has its time and place. Sometimes it is absolutely true that things need to be done a certain way, and too bad if not everybody likes me at the end of it, right? But the downside of it is you do that all the time, and you can be perceived as a bully. You certainly will not build relationships with a woodpecker style all the time. And it's really hard to always say, yeah, okay, we'll do it your way. So it becomes very intrusive. And like I said, sort of has that bullying feeling to it. But I want to be clear, it has its time and place. Okay. Let's look at the opposite end of that. The parakeet, high focus on other, low focus on self. So the parakeet is the style where you are most willing to acquiesce. Okay, yeah, okay, we'll do it your way. Because the parakeet is so concerned about maintaining the relationship that they'd rather give in and say, okay, I wanted it a different way, but we'll do it your way just so that we keep getting along. And again, just like the woodpecker, there's good and there's bad that comes with being a parakeet. So if you're the person who gives in and acquiesces and goes, okay, yeah, I wanted it this other way, but whatever you say, let's do it your way. The nice thing is you can move on. The parakeet has agreed. The downside is the parakeet becomes the constant martyr, right? They're the one that's always giving in. They're not getting their way. At a certain point, they're going, okay, like I'm feeling like I'm being walked all over here. And there is no relationship left because they're the only one who's giving in all the time, right? So the interesting thing about the parakeet, the very thing they want to preserve, being, maintaining a relationship, is often what they destroy. And there's no relationship left because they're always the one giving in. High on both sides, self and other, is the owl at the top right. And the owl is the one who wants to talk it all out. And the interesting thing about that owl position is that I think most of us believe that that's the right thing to do, that we should just talk everything out. And it is correct. I think I've said it enough today already, how communication is key, right? The problem with a true owl approach is that it can be really time consuming because the owl's preference is to discuss every part of this and make sure that everybody's position is understood and why you think what you think and how this has made you feel and what can we do so that everybody's happy with this. It can be a long discussion. I gave you the example of in my club, the morning people, not morning people, and going back and forth between morning and evening meetings. This has been an ongoing discussion now in my club for about 2.5 years. And we keep discussing, well, has everybody, how do you really feel about this, right? So it can be long and drawn out. And the reality is not every conflict is worth the time and energy, because you could spend every club meeting every week just talking about the issues impacting members and never getting anything else done, right? So we need to be aware that it's a long, drawn out process. And in the process, those who are not owls and don't feel comfortable with that style can actually feel manipulated by it. And they go, yeah, they're just still talking about it because they want to wear me down. They'll take it as more of a woodpecker approach than the actual owl approach. So it can also be just too much. I'm going to go now to the ostrich, the flip side of it. The ostrich, head in the sand, I think pretty clear that the ostrich just wants to ignore and pretend there is no conflict. They just don't want to acknowledge it at all. And I have seen this happen where there's been a lot of contentious issues talked about in a board meeting, a club board meeting, and people are upset, and people have said unkind things to each other in the meeting, and you've talked to people afterwards and said, "Oh, that was a tough meeting." And the ostrich in the group goes, "What? I didn't notice anything. That was fine. Everything was fine." They just don't want to acknowledge it at all. These are also the ones who are more likely to actually get physically ill if there is too much conflict. So you will not see them at club meetings where they think there might be contentious discussions, or at other kinds of meetings where they think it might get contentious. They will be sick that day if they possibly can, because they'd rather avoid it. They certainly, if they do get stuck in a meeting like that and it gets contentious, it's the ostriches that will not maintain eye contact because they don't want to be involved. Okay. And again, I think the downside of an ostrich style is pretty obvious. But I do have to say that there are times and places where being a little bit of an ostrich for a while is not a bad thing. So, and I say this to people who don't have ostrich tendencies. You don't need to get involved in every fight. Like, some fights are not worth fighting. They are better just ignored. So I always say that hesitantly, because those of us who tend to be ostriches, our perspective is, oh, there's a lot of conflicts that are worth ignoring, and that's a problem. But if you're the one who always gets involved, consider that maybe sometimes being an ostrich is okay, and you don't need to get involved in every single argument there is. And then in the middle, the hummingbird. And the hummingbird is in the middle because, just like the bird, the hummingbird style is a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and keeps moving around. The hummingbird wants to negotiate and get the conflict resolved quickly. So you're having a committee meeting, and it's a long, contentious committee meeting about, should we do this? Should we do that? And the hummingbird has said, well, you want a little bit of this? Let's do a little bit of that. We'll do a little bit of what you want. We'll do a little bit. Can everybody agree? At least we can live with this. Let's move on. They just want to get it resolved quickly and not spend too much time. Now, again, good and bad with that. Sometimes, like I said, with the owl approach, sometimes it's not worth the time. So a hummingbird approach of being quick and let's just do something we can live with is just as well. But the downside of it is that sometimes you just need to spend more time. You have the hummingbird approach that says, okay, this is good enough. But if it's just good enough, chances are it's going to be a conflict that's going to come back again. You're going to have to deal with it again because it wasn't fully resolved. It's more like a Band-Aid on the situation. So I've done a real quick job of describing these 5 styles. Perhaps you already see yourself in one of those. Maybe you see some of your other club members in some of those styles. I will say, and I think I can say this without any hesitation, that at least what I have heard, the vast majority of issues are with people who are either operating as woodpeckers or as ostriches in clubs. And so I'll speak to those particularly, and this is not to ignore the others. The others can be frustrating sometimes too, but just for the sake of our time here, with woodpeckers, dealing with woodpeckers in clubs, you've got kind of let me preface it. You've actually got 3 ways you can deal with woodpeckers. One is to acquiesce, become the parakeet, and say, okay, we'll do it your way. That's one way to deal with it. And sometimes that's a legitimate way of going in. Maybe it's just not something that's particularly important to you. It is to that person who's just so insistent that it be their way, and you go, yeah, okay, fine. Let's just do it that way and move on. Every once in a while, that's perfectly legit. At other times, dealing with a woodpecker means becoming a bit of a woodpecker yourself. And I say this, and I'm going to say this really carefully, because we can change our styles. We don't always have to be like if somebody's operating as a woodpecker, they may not always stay there. We may move around. And but sometimes dealing with a woodpecker means that you have to be a better woodpecker. So it's like, I want to do this. Well, no, you can't. Well, no, you can't. Well, no, you can't. Now, I say that hesitantly because it's not it's not a nice way to deal with a woodpecker, right? And it does move them out of their position sometimes, but it's probably not your first approach that you want to take with a woodpecker. And it's going to likely end result is definitely winners and losers, right? The third way of dealing with a woodpecker is to allow them to save face somewhat. So, for example, to take the issue out of a public arena. So instead of having that discussion at a meeting, to have a sidebar and to push and go, okay, like this is really coming across badly. I think that we can do this and this and this. And I think if it's your idea and you come back with this and say, okay, I maybe spoke rashly, but if we come back and say we got a solution, you say it like it's your idea, so you let them save face like it's their idea. That, and again, I'm saying this quickly as if it's an easy thing to do. Don't get me wrong, it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, but allowing them to save face and doing that in a sidebar way is often a good way of dealing with a woodpecker. And then the ostrich, not wanting to acknowledge things at all. Again, the biggest issue with ostriches is making sure that they feel safe. So again, it's not having, excuse me, not having the issue out in public. It's not surprising them with having a contentious issue. If I know somebody tends to be an ostrich, I will usually tell them ahead of time, you know what? We're going to be talking about this. I don't think everybody's going to agree on this. I am going to be asking your opinion on it. I'm going to be asking everybody's opinion on it. I want to give you a heads up on that. If I can do that, that's what I'm going to do with an ostrich. If I have them not talking about anything, I will ask them later on. I'll give them a call or whatever, and I'll say, you didn't say anything at that meeting. I'm just checking in with you now, just one-on-one between us, so that you give them that more safe space to address things. That sometimes allows ostriches to move as well. So again, I'm being overly simplistic here, but I hope it's giving you some sense of all of this. Bob, can we move on to the next slide? Because I want to keep us moving here. One last piece that I want you to be thinking about is the difference between positions and then interests and needs. And this visual is something I keep in mind when I'm dealing with conflicts all the time. And that is that when we hear something from someone that is, what I would call, a conflict position statement, and that's usually when we have issues. That's usually what we're talking about. We're just talking about our position. That's what comes out verbally. It's just the tip of the iceberg, right? It's the top of that triangle. So I've got an example there. A position statement. I'm leaving this club. I'm done. I can't operate here anymore. That is a position. That's their position statement. And that tells you there's something underneath that. So you'll see their positions, what we say we want. Okay. I want to leave this club. But if we can dig a little deeper, if we can look a little bit below the surface at the interests, what they really want, when somebody says, I'm leaving this club, what could they really want? And again, this is one example. This might not be everybody's interest when they say that statement, but for example, their interest might be, I want someone to tell me I'm an important part of this club. So I'm feeling neglected, I'm feeling left out of something, people aren't listening to me, whatever the case may be. But what I really want is somebody to tell me, no, you can't leave. We need you here. And then if I dig even a little bit deeper, what do I really need? What are those fundamental needs that are part of this position and interest? Well, the fundamental need here is I need to be a part of a community that accepts me and values me for who I am. Oh, and where I can be myself. Excuse me. That's the real need. So when I say I'm leaving this club, what I really need is feeling respect, feeling valued, feeling part of a community. What the position is, what the interest is, what the need is, will vary with each person, with each conflict. But depending on what their interest and their need is, will impact what you do. So, in an example like this, if you're addressing their interests and their needs as opposed to the position, you have opportunity to address the real conflict. And the other thing I'll say, to find out what the interests and needs are, you have to be curious and you have to ask questions. And so the position statement, I'm leaving this club. The fundamental question is, why? Why do you want to leave the club? Now, I always caution people asking a straight up why question can sometimes feel threatening and judgmental. It can sound like, why would you leave this club? And, sort of, how stupid are you kind of thing. So you sometimes don't want to ask an exact why question. Maybe it's, well, what's going on? What are you worried about? What's your concern? What are you hoping in terms of being a part or not a part of this club? If you start asking some of those kinds of questions, it allows you to get at the interests and the needs, and then you can start talking about those things instead of just the position. All right, let's flip to the next slide if we could, Bob, please. So out of all of that and all those different pieces, some fundamentals here. First and foremost, no assumptions. So when it comes to dealing with a conflict, do not assume that you know what's going on. You need to ask questions. You need to be curious. So if you're the club president and there's conflict going on over there that doesn't involve you directly, but you as president need to deal with it, then it doesn't matter that you have known these club members forever and that they're the one that brought you into the club and so you know them 100%. Do not make the assumptions. You need to ask questions. Really, really important. To me, curiosity is always the key to dealing with conflict. And again, listen to understand, not to agree necessarily, but to understand. And the more you ask questions and are really curious, you're going to find out, okay, what kind of conflict is this really? is this a misunderstanding? Is it a perceptual conflict? Or is this more of a structural thing and we need to deal with some structure? What is this that I'm hearing here? Or, how is this an issue because this is a couple of woodpeckers after each other and they're just refusing to give in and they're hammering away at each other? Is this something that's escalating too high? What is it? And what are the real interests here? What's underlying all of this? The other thing that I would say, and I say this to Rotarians particularly, bringing it out in the open doesn't make it worse. A lot of times we want to keep things smooth and say, okay, we're Rotary here. We don't have conflicts. Again, we're the good people and we have good intentions. And so let's just we don't want anybody to know that we've got conflict here. Unfortunately, when you don't bring it out in the open, you have more chance of making it worse. So calling it as it is, non-judgmentally, but saying, okay, we've got an issue and we've got to resolve this. We got to work this out because that's really what Rotarians do. They work things out. That is a better place to be. And then finally, I would say to you as presidents of your clubs, it's not your job to decide who's right and who's wrong. It is your job to help the people in conflict talk through the conflict and find a solution that works for them. And you don't ever have to figure out who's right and wrong. You just have to figure out how do we move forward because we're all Rotarians and we want good things to happen and we want Rotary to do good things. So considering that we're different people or that we have a different perception on this or we have a misunderstanding about that, et cetera, how do we move forward? That's your job, not deciding who's right and who's wrong. Now, I'm looking at my time, and I know we don't have a lot more time, but can we go to the next slide, Bob? And I do have a case study here. Do we have enough time to at least let people go off into groups for a couple of minutes?
I think we do, but I'm not sure. Let's give it a whirl.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's try this.
Okay.
And we'll keep it simple. Here's the case study. So you're relatively new to Rotary and you're excited to be the incoming president. We have a lot of that these days where new Rotarians become presidents. I don't know if that happens in your district, it happens in mine. But you can already see potential conflict with one club member. You've got a past district governor in your club. And she has a tendency to be quite critical. She's constantly reminding everyone about the RI rules and regulations, and people are getting upset. And in fact, some have even said, you know what, if she's here, I don't want to be here. Now, let's take a few minutes, just if we can divide people up into groups. I'm going to give you just like what? Can we give you, say, 5 minutes? That's all we got, 5 minutes. And just take one piece of this. You don't need to resolve it all, but let's just talk about, so what kind of conflict do you think this is? And depending on what kind of conflict it is, what might be some options for addressing it? And again, I know 5 minutes is not enough time to figure it all out, but can we just go off for 5 minutes and discuss, and then we'll come back?
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
So guys, do we have to be pretty tight on time for finishing up, or will people just fall off as they need, or what?
I think that's what will happen.
Yeah,
Gail,
I think
I'm not even sure what time it is, but I
it's
mean, I'm okay.
it's
Yeah.
8:20.
But we've got two people that haven't joined rooms yet.
Yeah.
But Zabina was driving,
Okay, that
Yeah,
could
so it
be
must be
Rachel.
harder.
and Rachel probably is driving as well, or
Okay.
or she's
Okay,
away.
that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know
Uh,
we started late, but I still want to be sensitive to people. We're
yeah,
expecting something to be done at a certain time, and we need to be done as close to that time as we can.
so I'll give you a heads up when they're coming back.
Okay, perfect. How big a group did you put them in, Bob? Were they like,
4 or 5.
yeah, perfect. Perfect.
I tried to if it's too big, too many people, they don't have a chance to. But 4
Yeah,
should be good.
yeah, yeah. Well, exactly, because and especially when it's just a few minutes. So,
Um, so that means we have 6 rooms.
okay. Okay. So you guys are getting over the snow and cold that you've been inundated with?
Yeah, today was quite pleasant outside.
That's true. Today is, what is it
We
raining?
had we had a touch of freezing rain yesterday, and it was kind of damp like that this morning, but it was nice.
Oh, good.
We had
What's
that
it?
feeling for
You're
20.
not in Ottawa. You're away, right?
Yeah, I'm in Australia, so it's Thursday morning for me.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. What time
and
is it?
summer.
And summer. Yeah. Yeah. So it cooled off a little bit yesterday too. It was only 29.
Oh, too bad. Are you with family there?
Yeah, our daughter lives
That's
here.
that's what I thought I remembered.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereabouts?
In Perth,
Perth.
on the west side, the most remote city in Australia.
Uh,
The hardest one to get to.
Oh my God.
what does she do there?
Well, she's a teacher by training, but she now works for what would be the equivalent to be the Ministry of Education.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So about 30 seconds left.
Okay, perfect. And they're coming back. Do we have everybody back?
Not yet, I don't think. It should be
Okay.
close.
Okay.
I think so.
Everybody's back? Okay. I know 5 minutes was not a lot of time. And Bob, you said there were 6 groups?
Yes.
Okay, and I know we're coming to the end of our time for this session, so I want to be quick. But can I just hear a quick thought or an insight from each group? Bob, maybe you can help
Yeah, I
me.
can do that. Kathy Robbins, you're in room 1.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute.
That's all right.
I don't have a lot to say because that's actually sort of the position our club is in, and we've been losing members over the years. So I'm more or less all ears to other people's ideas. So,
Did you have any insight in your group discussion about it?
yes, yeah, there was some good comments made. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. The other gentleman in room 1. you had a really impactful comment. Could you repeat what you said, please? With Cassie and I and Liz.
Okay, yeah, with Liz. Okay, so that was
Yes.
me, Hazem Kutsi from Belleville. I know Tess might have disagreed, and I was going to make the comment though that we have to make the person that is not helping the club or potentially hurting the club, we have to make them aware that their actions are causing that harm to the club. They may not be aware, or they may be aware and doing it intentionally. Either way, we have to let them know that that kind of behavior isn't helping the club and isn't going to be tolerated any further, and that there will be an expectation that their behavior will be more supportive and will help the club grow. And you know, because if it's been shrinking due to their behavior, that's factual evidence that they're causing this, and that will then be brought to their attention. So you have to give them a chance to change. You have to give them a chance to be aware that they are causing harm and hurting other people, whether intentional or not. And then from there, you've got now the opportunity to correct that behavior or eliminate them from the club if it continues, if your bylaws are set up in that manner.
Yeah. And and what you're saying comes back to that being curious. Like, so are they aware? Do they know the impact of their behavior? And what's that behavior all about in the first place? So if they're the one that are overbearing and it needs to be this way and that way, why? Like, is there in fact something you're doing wrong? Or are those still the rules? Are they not the rules? Et cetera, et cetera. So being curious about that, that's great. Okay, another group.
Mark Morissette from room 2.
Oh, you're muted, Mark.
Well, and that's all I have to say on that matter. I think we were talking, and I think everybody's going to say it's an interesting challenge that probably every group faces with the experience that Rotary has. I think we took a bit of a different approach or a different thought than the last group is really about, is what this person doing wrong, or is the delivery wrong, and really about nailing down, ensuring people are valued, right, and showing this person where her value is in mentoring the new people and making sure that the new people feel valued and have a voice. And it really is about embracing that, in this particular conflict or pre-conflict, because it's not quite there, or it's not open anyway, embracing the old with the new and showing how the two meet and then move the club forward.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Okay, room 3. How about Nancy?
I was group 2.
No, Nancy Phil.
Oh.
Are you there, Nancy? How about Beatrice?
Yeah, if you ask the other members.
Gosh, I knew I was going to get picked on.
Okay, Beatrice or Nancy?
I can do it. I can do it. So we, I guess, sort of put together that and we figured that maybe this person wasn't like words are failing me right now. I'm honestly a little tired. It's been a long day. I guess the way we looked at it was maybe this person isn't, I guess we're kind of similar to the second group where we thought maybe this person isn't expressing what they actually need in the way that they want to. So there's an issue with delivery. And I personally come from a cultural context where you have to respect your elders and you want to give them that respect and the benefit of the doubt, and especially someone who's like a past district governor. Like the way I think we were beginning to discuss approaching this was maybe just talking to that person, getting to know them a bit more one-on-one, and finding out a little bit more just why are you so passionate about this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you need from the club?
Yeah. Yeah. Comes back to that being curious, asking questions. I love it. Thank you.
Okay, room 4. Brian?
Yes. So actually, Rhonda really kicked the ball in the right direction by sort of like identifying that maybe this person actually needs to have an opportunity to share more deeply, a little bit of that spotlight, giving an understanding of why they feel in this way. You know, what's their background, and maybe just, you know, we didn't quite get to the using this language, but really validating that person, and having them play an important role by sharing. I think we were just starting to move into the next question, which was, so what do you do with everybody else who's, you know, maybe not in love with that idea or not in love with this person's approach? But I think, you know, bringing about that magnanimity, calling upon, you know, Rotarians to, you know, to be truth-seeking people and to be seeking that fairness for everyone. I think that's really something to lean on, and I felt like our group was kind of headed in the rather than show them the door. I think it was more a little bit of like, you know, here, let's just get some chairs around and start out by giving that person what they need to get it off their chest, but then move on to honor others as well, kind of creating a better culture out of it instead of a worse one.
Love it.
I hope our group members agree with that summary.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks, Brian. Room 5. Catherine? Are you there, Catherine?
Sorry, just was having coughing fit.
Oh,
Um,
timing is everything, isn't it?
yeah. Anyway, we kind of just discussed same as a few of the other groups. Maybe they weren't aware and you know, trying to figure out how we can go about getting everybody kind of back on track without having all these feelings and stuff.
Okay, and finally, last room. Murray?
Yeah, we had a discussion. We're actually living some of this within our club right now, as I'm sure other clubs are. But current president and myself have taken the individual aside and just had a good discussion with her, and you know, just making sure that she understands what's in the interests of the club versus personal interests, and making sure there is a balance there. And while we think we make progress and things seem to improve, then we have what we call regression.
Mhm.
So, you know, it is, I guess I would call it a constant coaching opportunity.
Right. Yeah, I love that. But it's a good reminder. You know, one conversation does not always resolve it. It's something you may have to revisit a few times.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was all the groups, right, Bob?
Yes, it was.
Great. So you can stop sharing the slides there if you don't mind.
I can do that.
Great. Then I can just see the group a little bit better. Again, I apologize for coming on late. But you can't believe how relieved I am to finally get a prognosis on what's been going on, because I've had some other issues this last week with some meetings, and to know that it's a computer issue and not a connectivity issue is probably a good thing. So something good has come out of it. It is always my pleasure spending time with your district incoming presidents. I hope that you found this helpful to at least start thinking and talking about some of these conflict issues. I don't wish a lot of them on you in your year ahead as president, but also know that that we don't always get to avoid them, and that is part of the job. that you've taken on for this next year. I love where I was hearing some of these conversations going, and that is starting with curiosity and just asking, so what's really going on here? And I think that's the key place to start. So just wanted to say thank you so much. I hope this was a good session for you. I wish all of you the very best.
Thanks, Gail. Does anybody have any questions for Gail?
Yeah,
We got a few minutes.
I've got a question for Gail. What time is it where you are now, Gail?
Right now it is 9:30 in the morning on Thursday morning.
Okay.
So let me just tell you, Thursday morning is a great morning. So you have something to look forward to.
We look forward to it. Anybody else?
Well, thank you, Gail. That was really informative and very, very good learning presentation. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So just on behalf of the whole group, Gail, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank you very much for coming on tonight and struggling with computers and the time difference and stuff like that. This is such an important topic for us to be aware of. And maybe we don't realize it, but conflict happens all the time, and to be aware of it and how to deal with it is really important. So, and it's something not just Rotary. It can be career, it can be family. There's many different aspects of where conflict, and the best thing is to not to get into that spiral, to deal with it before it escalates.
Yeah.
So on behalf of the group, thank you, Gail. I'm going to be going to many meetings now, trying to figure out which birds are there. So you all will have a nickname soon. Anyway, thanks, Gail. Say hi to Nabil for me.
Will do.
Joseph, can I turn it over to you?
Yes,
Or Liz?
Gail, I want to thank you once again this year for joining us. Again, a tremendous job, and it changes a little bit every year because the groups are a little bit different. As a thank you, we would like to make a $200 donation in your name to the foundation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And I wish all the presidents-elects a great year and very little conflict, especially Liz, the incoming deputy governor. There's no conflicts at all in the incoming year.
There's no conflicts. That's
No
right.
conflicts. We'll see you back here next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And next Wednesday will be a vibrant club. We're going to talk a little bit how we can look at our clubs and make them vibrant. So once again, thank you for your time. Gail, have a good morning.
Thank you.
Everybody else, good night. And we'll see you back
Yeah.
here next week.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And thank you so much,
Good night.
Gail.